Hey, this is Todd from OneShot API, and this is a short tutorial on how to perform batch transactions with your OneShot API server wallets. A little bit of technical background on how we enable batch transactions with our platform. Under the hood, we are using the MetaMask Smart Accounts framework. The first time you try to execute a batch transaction with your server wallets, OneShot API will automatically upgrade that account to a MetaMask Smart Wallet so that it can perform multiple actions in a single transaction. I've put the link to MetaMask's GitHub repo for their delegation framework. This is the actual implementation of the smart wallet that we are using inside of OneShot API. So if you come to that repo, go to the source directory, and then under that, the EIP 7702 directory. What your server wallet is being upgraded to is the EIP 7702 stateless delegator. And in this smart wallet, what's being called for you inside of OneShot API is this execute method here, which takes a mode and a packed call data bytes object. So using this yourself, writing your own framework around this could end up with a lot of boilerplate and maybe end up not being worth the hassle if you're doing this, in a new product or in a trading script that you're trying to use. OneShot API abstracts all of that away from you. All you end up having is a simple TypeScript SDK where you can just say, these are the functions I want to call, and with these input arguments. And then we handle the packing and the gas estimation and calling this execute method for you automatically. But check out this repo. It's really well written, shows you how to do some cool stuff in Solidity, but that's what we're using under the hood. So to get started, let's go to oneshotapi.com, log in or create a free account if you don't have one already. The first thing we need to do is go to the Wallets tab. We're going to need a server wallet on the base Sepolia network. That's where we're going to be doing the tutorial. So click Create a New Wallet, give it a name and a description, and then for blockchain, scroll down to base Sepolia, select that, and then the low balance threshold alert, let's just make that some kind of a small number so that we're not getting annoying messages about our balance being low. Then hit confirm, and this will provision a base Sepolia server wallet. I've already got one here that I've funded, but I'm going to tell you how to fund it quickly. First thing you're going to need is some base Sepolia ETH. I've put a link in the YouTube description to Base's docs, which point you to various base Sepolia faucets. Personally, I like to use the Alchemy faucet, but all of these work fine. Just make sure you send it to this server wallet address. And then the next thing you're going to need for the example repo we're about to get into, you're going to need some base Sepolia USDC. So for that, again, I've put another link in the YouTube description to the Circle faucet. So when you come to this page, select USDC, network, scroll down, select base Sepolia, and then the send to address, just make sure you're copying that address in the OneShot API portal, paste it there, and then hit send 10 USDC, and then your wallet is ready to go. The next thing, we're going to be using the SDK, which needs to authenticate against our account. So come to the API Keys tab, hit Create a New Key, give it a name, hit Confirm, and then you'll have a key and a secret. So we're going to be using those two things. We're also going to need the business ID. The business ID is in the top right-hand corner. Just remember those three things are right here inside the OneShot API portal. Next, let's actually get into some code. The link to the examples repo, again, is in the YouTube description. Come to this GitHub repo and go to the TypeScript/batch-tx directory, and you can check out the README. You can actually just follow the README directly, and you'll end up in the same state as following this video. But let's actually get into the code. So if you clone that repo, again, cd into TypeScript/batch-tx's, and the first thing we need to do is there is an env file. So let's copy the example.env file into .env. If we open that, we need our API key and secret and our business ID. So let's put those here. Okay, and so once we've got our credentials, be sure to save it, and then you can close this file. And then the next thing, let's look at the source code for this example. There's really only one dependency in here, which is the OneShot TypeScript client. And so we import that. We read our credentials from the environment. Here at the top, we have the contract address for USDC, and we have the OneShot prompts ID in a If you're building a product, or you're writing a script that's maybe doing some trading, you don't actually need this prompt ID. This is just here to help us import the contract methods that we need to call without doing a bunch of additional setup. But you don't need to change these two parameters. They're universal. You can use them as they are. So here we instantiate our one-shot client with our API key and secret. Then we make sure that we do have a wallet provision for base Sepolia. Print the server wallet address to the screen. And then here is where we use that one-shot prompt ID to ensure that we've imported the smart contract methods that we're going to want to call in just a second. So again, if you're building a product, or you're writing a script and you know ahead of time which functions you're going to be calling, you don't actually need this. Again, it's just helpful to import them all at once. So after that, we find the method IDs generated by One-Shot API for the approve method and the transfer method. And then we do first 2 single executions so that we can compare them against the batch execution. So this would show you how to execute a single transaction. So here we see we give it the approve method ID. Approve takes spender and value. You give the names of the inputs and then the values you want to give them. Then here we give it the transfer method ID with the to and a value, and again inputs for whatever makes sense for your application. And then I want to call out here in One-Shot API you can attach memo fields to your transactions so that when you're looking at your transaction history in One-Shot API, you can remember like under what context was it that I created this transaction. So you can put JSON objects or whatever makes sense for your use case in this memo field. It's super helpful. And then lastly here is the batch execution call. This is how you would set up a multiple action transaction. So at the top we give it the ID of the One-Shot server wallet. So we're telling it use this specific server wallet for performing this transaction. And then we give it a list or an array of the various functions that we want to call in this transaction. And in this example, there are 2 methods on the same smart contract, but it doesn't have to be. It could be different methods on different smart contracts. As far as that goes, it's completely flexible. Here is our approve method. Again, spender and value, same as above. And here's our transfer method, to and a value, same as above. And again, we put a memo field at the end so that we know why we performed that transaction. And then at the end, we output the transaction IDs so that we can see that in our console log. So let's try to run it. First thing we need to do, if we check out the directions, we've got our API key and secret, we've got our server wallet, we've funded it, we've cloned this directory, we're ready to go. So let's do npm install to get our dependencies. And then we need to run npm run build. And then lastly, we can run the example, npm run start. There we go. So now we've executed it. If we go back to One-Shot API and come to the transaction history tab, there is our 3 transactions with our memo fields. And if we click on the transaction hash, you can actually compare the sum of the transaction fees to the sum or the transaction fee for the batch. And if you look at the batch transaction, here's the log for both transfer and approval. So it's that easy to construct and execute batch transactions with One-Shot API server wallets. Give it a shot. If you have questions, you can always reach out to the team in Telegram, and watch out for more tutorials coming from us in the future.